My name is Jake Harrison, and I've always prided myself on being a hardworking blue-collar guy. For the past 15 years, I've lived in the same North Carolina town where I grew up, building a life I thought was rock solid. I work as a construction foreman, up before dawn and on the job site all day, making sure homes and offices rise out of dirt. My wife, Laura, is a nurse at the local clinic, caring, smart, and the last person I ever imagined would betray me. We've been married for 12 years and have two beautiful kids. Sophie, who just turned 11 and has her mama's green eyes, and Josh, 7, who's all endless energy and toothy grins. We live in a modest three-bedroom house on a quiet street outside Raleigh, complete with a picket fence and a tire swing that I hung on the oak tree out back. To any outsider, we must have looked like the perfect happy family. In the early years of our marriage, Laura and I were inseparable. We met at a county fair when I was 25. I was helping a buddy run a booth for the demolition derby signups, and she was there with some friends. One smile from her and I was hooked. She liked that I worked with my hands and wasn't shy about getting them dirty. I loved her laugh and how she could chatter on about her day caring for patients with genuine warmth. We dated a year and married the next. Our life together had the usual ups and downs of any couple balancing work and raising kids, but I never doubted we were a team. Over time, routine settled in. I'd wake at 5 a.m., pack a lunch pail, and head to the construction site. Laura's schedule at the clinic was more 9 to 5, so she handled getting the kids ready for school after I left. In the evenings, I usually got home around 6 or 7 p.m., bone-tired and covered in sawdust or mud. Laura would have dinner ready or be just getting home herself if she picked up an extra shift. We'd eat as a family at the kitchen table, Sophie jabbering about her fifth-grade projects, Josh making a mess with ketchup and telling corny first-grade jokes. Those moments, with my daughter giggling and my son climbing into my lap after eating, were the highlight of my day. Laura would smile, watching us, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. But in the past year or so, I noticed subtle changes. At first, I shrugged them off. Marriages evolve, people get busy, that's what I told myself. Yet a gnawing feeling in my gut told me something wasn't quite right. For one, our intimacy had dwindled. After putting the kids to bed, we used to curl up on the couch and watch TV or just talk about our days. Lately, Laura would claim exhaustion and turn in early or bury herself in a book barely looking up when I sat down. Nights that used to end with laughter or lovemaking behind our locked bedroom door turned into her mumbling good night while facing the wall, leaving me staring at the ceiling in the dark. Then there were the little habits that changed. Laura started taking her phone with her everywhere, even into the bathroom for a quick shower. She'd never been secretive before. In fact, she used to leave her phone charging on the kitchen counter and didn't care if I answered it. Now it was practically glued to her, and I noticed her tapping away at odd hours, smiling at the screen. When I'd ask what was so funny, she'd flippantly say, "Oh, just a meme from a coworker," or "nothing important." If I walked by, she'd tilt the phone away or click the screen off. Once or twice, I heard her laugh in a way that wasn't her usual laugh. It sounded flirtatious, playful, and when I glanced over, she'd immediately tone it down. I tried to rationalize it. She was making new friends at work, maybe. Or perhaps it was a stressful day and texting with her sister or one of her girlfriends helped her unwind. Trust your wife, I scolded myself. After all, I wasn't perfect either. There were nights I came home late without calling, or weekends I spent more time tinkering on our aging pickup truck than helping with household chores. I thought maybe she was just reacting to me not pulling my weight at home. So I started doing little extra things, washing the dishes after dinner, surprising her with her favorite takeout on Fridays to give her a break from cooking. She thanked me, but the gratitude felt surface level. Her mind seemed elsewhere. One Friday night about 6 months ago, I planned a date night to try to rekindle our connection. I arranged for my older sister, Linda, to watch Sophie and Josh. Linda lives a few miles away and has always been close to me. We lost our mom early, so Linda, being 5 years older, often stepped in as a mother figure. She's also great with the kids and was happy to help. I didn't tell Laura about the date ahead of time because I wanted to surprise her with dinner at La Trattoria, that nice Italian place downtown we hadn't been to in ages. I even made a reservation and put on a clean button-down instead of my usual flannel. But when I strolled into the kitchen that evening, I found Laura still in her scrubs, tensely pacing with her phone pressed to her ear. She jumped, startled, when she saw me. I'll call you back, she muttered hastily into the phone and hung up. Her face was flushed, eyes wide like a kid caught sneaking candy. Everything okay? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. I stepped forward to give her a hello kiss, but she turned her head. My lips brushed her cheek instead. Fine, work stuff, she said quickly, slipping the phone into her purse. I just got off a long call with one of the lab technicians about a patient's test results. What are you all dressed up for? I hesitated, a pang of disappointment hitting me. I thought we could go out tonight. Linda's with the kids. I made us a reservation for dinner, a late anniversary celebration. Our anniversary had been a week prior. We'd barely acknowledged it because she claimed she had a headache that night. This was my attempt to make up for it. Laura's shoulders sagged and she gave a sigh. Oh, Jake, I'm sorry, I'm just so tired. It was a crazy day at the clinic. 2 nurses called in sick and I had to cover for them. I don't think I have the energy to sit at a restaurant, much less get changed and go out. She offered a weak half smile. Can we rain check it? Maybe next weekend? I swallowed my frustration and forced a reassuring nod. Sure, next weekend. I tried not to let it show, but inside I felt deflated. This was the 3rd or 4th time she'd shot down my attempts to spend time together in recent months. That night we ordered pizza instead. We ate in near silence. She scrolled on her phone between bites while I sipped a beer and pretended to watch whatever forgettable show flickered on the TV. It felt like we were just 2 roommates, not husband and wife out on a date. When we went to bed, I finally decided to voice my concern. As she slid under the covers, I said softly, Laura, I feel like we've been distant. Is everything all right? Are we all right? She stared at the ceiling, then turned on her side away from me. I'm fine, Jake, just stressed. Work has been overwhelming and I'm exhausted. Can we not do this tonight? Her voice had an edge. Defensive, maybe a little guilty. I sighed. I'm here if you want to talk about anything. I love you. Love you too, she replied automatically. But I noticed she didn't say, I'm just tired this time, or offer any real reassurance. She just clicked off her bedside lamp, effectively ending the conversation. I lay awake for hours, an anxious knot tightening in my chest. My mind went to dark places. Was it me? Had I done something to push her away, or was there someone else? I hated that thought. It felt ugly and paranoid. This is the woman I pledged my life to. She wouldn't break our vows. She couldn't. Yet the signs were adding up in a way I could no longer ignore. Over the next few weeks, I quietly began to pay more attention. One Sunday afternoon, I was in the garage changing the oil in my truck while the kids played in the yard. Laura was supposedly out running errands. As I slid out from under the truck to wipe my hands, I saw her car gliding into the driveway. She stepped out carrying a single grocery bag. Only one bag after 3 hours out? Hey, need help with the groceries? I called, walking over. I peered into the back seat. It was empty. Oh no, this is all, she said hurriedly, lifting the lightweight plastic bag as evidence. I could see a loaf of bread and milk in it, nothing else. I went to the pharmacy too. Had to pick up some specialty shampoo they finally got in stock. She was over-explaining, a nervous habit I'd noticed when she wasn't telling the whole truth. I didn't press her, but I did glance at the dashboard clock in her car. She'd left around 1 p.m., and now it was almost 4. Our local grocery store and pharmacy are 10 minutes away. What had she really been doing for those extra hours? That night, after she'd fell asleep, I crept out to her car with my keys and quietly opened the driver's door. My heart pounded like I was some thief, but this was my own wife I was checking up on. I hate to admit it, but I rummaged through her car for clues. In the back seat, I found a crumpled receipts under the floor mat that she must have overlooked when cleaning out. Flattening them, I read one from a gas station convenience store for 2 bottles of water, a pack of gum, and condoms. My stomach dropped. The receipt was from that very afternoon, time-stamped about 2:30 p.m. We haven't used condoms in years. Laura's on birth control. There was absolutely no reason for her to buy those, unless she wasn't planning on using them with me. I had to sit in the car a minute to steady myself. My hands shook as anger and fear coursed through me. Maybe I grasped for straws. Maybe she bought them for a friend? Ridiculous. Or perhaps the cashier accidentally rang something up. But it was clearly listed. I felt hot all over, a roaring in my ears. I swallowed down a surge of nausea and quietly closed the car door. Back inside, I watched her sleeping form in the faint glow of our nightlight. She looked so peaceful, even innocent, the face I knew so well. It was hard to reconcile that image with the idea she might be sneaking around with another man. I wanted to shake her awake and demand the truth, but a calmer voice in my head held me back. Don't tip your hand. Not yet. Get proof. If I confronted her now, she might just spin lies or get better at hiding it. I needed to know for sure what I was dealing with. From that point on, I lived a double life. By day, I went through the motions, working my construction job, taking the kids to soccer practice or dance class when I could, and giving Laura a polite smile across the dinner table. By night, or whenever I had a quiet moment, I became a detective in my own home. It felt surreal and heartbreaking, but I had to protect myself and my children from whatever was coming. One evening I got my chance. Laura was in the shower and had left her phone charging on the nightstand, a rare lapse. I knew her passcode. We'd always been open like that in the past. And with trembling fingers, I unlocked her phone. Guilt and adrenaline battled inside me as I opened her text messages. Immediately, my heart sank. There was a thread with a contact saved under the innocuous name K. She didn't know anyone whose name started with just K as far as I recalled. Opening the thread, my worst fears were confirmed. Messages from just hours ago filled the screen. Kay can't stop thinking about earlier. You feel so incredible. Laura, shh. You'll get me blushing at work. Ha ha ha. When can I see you again? Kay, soon. I miss you. Friday night? Laura, yes, I'll make an excuse. Maybe another girls' night. Kay, perfect. I'll book our room. Same place. Laura, you spoil me. 3. I had to stop reading for a second because my vision blurred with rage. My hands clenched so hard around the phone I thought I might crack it. There were explicit references to meetings at a motel. The context was clear. They'd done this before. Him praising her body, her reciprocating. Worst of all, her tone was giddy, like a schoolgirl with a crush. A side of her I hadn't seen in so long she never texted me like that anymore. I scrolled up and saw this had been going on for at least a few months. There were selfies she'd sent him. Modest ones, thankfully not nudes, but one in a slinky dress I'd never seen before, blowing a kiss at the camera. She had definitely not worn that dress for me. My stomach churned with a toxic cocktail of hurt and fury. I quietly forwarded the entire text thread to my own phone. I'd need these later as evidence. My fingers shook, but I managed to save all the incriminating pictures and messages. I also snapped photos of the condom receipt with my phone, just to have every base covered. If there was going to be a war, I was arming myself to the teeth with proof. Before I could dig further, I heard the water shut off. I quickly deleted the notification of the forwarded texts, praying she wouldn't notice the thread marked read, and locked the phone, placing it exactly as it was. Then I darted out, heart hammering, and planted myself at the kitchen table, pretending to sort the day's mail. That night, I barely slept at all, running on pure adrenaline and anguish. She lay next to me sound asleep as if everything were perfectly normal. I couldn't stand to be in the same bed, so I slipped out and spent the rest of the night on our living room couch, staring at the ceiling fan spinning uselessly above. My mind raced in circles. How could she do this? Who the hell is Kay? How will I protect my kids? By morning, I had resolved one thing. I needed help and I needed a plan. This wasn't just about heartbreak. I had to think of the practical fallout. If I blew up now in a rage, she might take the kids and run, or destroy evidence, or who knows what. I wanted to make sure I came out of this with my children safe and my life intact. I also knew myself, and as much as I ached and raged, some part of me wanted revenge. After all the years I gave her, all the sacrifices, the love and trust, she was throwing our family away for some fling. I wasn't about to let her walk away unscathed. Chapter 2. Discovery at the Dragonfly Inn. I decided to bide my time for a few days to gather more information and steel myself. On Thursday, I overheard Laura on the phone in the laundry room whispering, "Yes." I told him I'm going for a girls' night out Friday. He won't suspect a thing. I clenched the wrench I was holding. I'd been fixing a leaky pipe under the kitchen sink. So tight my knuckles went white. She was talking to him. Kay, I assumed. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay quiet and listen. She continued softly. "I'll drop the kids at my mom's to spend the night. No, he usually has early Saturdays at the site, so he won't be around in the morning either." A pause. Same motel. Room 12, right? Good. I can't wait to see you, Kevin. Kevin. So that's the bastard's name. And she was arranging everything so neatly, deceiving me, using her mom as cover to stash the kids. There was a sickening familiarity in her tone, like this was routine. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was an ongoing affair. I spent the rest of Thursday in a haze of anger and grim determination. I called Linda that night, stepping outside on the porch where Laura couldn't overhear. Keeping my voice low, I explained I had an important favor to ask. Linda, I said, I can't go into details right now, but I need you to be ready tomorrow night in case I need help with the kids. I might need you to pick them up or have them stay with you on short notice. Linda was alarmed. Jake, what's going on? Is everything okay? I hesitated, swallowing the lump in my throat. I don't think things are okay with me and Laura, I admitted, my voice strained. I'll explain when I can, but please just trust me on this. Can you be on standby for Sophie and Josh tomorrow? She agreed immediately. Of course, you know I'm here for you, just say the word. And Jake, whatever's happening, stay calm, all right? Don't do anything rash. I'll try, I muttered. My big sister knows me well. The fact she preemptively cautioned me told me my tone must have radiated the fury I was trying to conceal. The next day, Friday, was one of the longest days of my life. At work, I could barely focus. More than once, one of my crew asked if I was feeling all right because I'd just be staring off into space with a 2-4 in hand, not hearing them. I mumbled something about a headache. Inside, I was coiled tight as a spring, counting down the hours. When I got home that afternoon, Laura was already dolled up in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. She had on a form-fitting blue dress that hugged her curves, and she'd curled her usually straight brown hair into loose waves. My heart twisted. She looked beautiful, but it wasn't for me. She practically glowed with excitement as she rushed around, ostensibly getting ready for her girls' night. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom watching her in front of the mirror. She jumped slightly when she noticed my reflection there. Oh, Jake, you startled me, she said, holding a hand to her chest. I realized she had on the delicate heart-shaped pendant necklace I gave her for our 10th anniversary. The cruelty of it, wearing my gift while she went to meet him, made me grit my teeth. Sorry, I replied, voice flat. I leaned against the door frame, trying to act casual. You're sure you have to go tonight? I was thinking maybe we could rent a movie with the kids or something. In truth, the kids had already been picked up by Laura's mom an hour before I got home. She had arranged a grandma sleepover, claiming we both wanted a break. Another lie. She gave an apologetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. I know, honey, but I haven't seen my girlfriends in ages. We planned this weeks ago. Rain check, okay? Tomorrow, we can do family time. She stepped over and pecked me on the cheek. Her perfume was enticing, a scent she hadn't worn in a long time. There's leftover meatloaf in the fridge if you get hungry. Don't wait up, it might go late. I forced a nod and even a weak smile. Have fun, I managed to say. Inside, I was raging. I don't know how I kept it together, standing so close to her knowing she was about to go give herself to someone else. As soon as Laura's car backed out of the driveway, I sprang into action. I grabbed my own keys and phone. I had already changed out of my dusty work clothes into jeans and a plain gray t-shirt earlier, anticipating this. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears, but I felt strangely calm in my purpose. Tonight, I would catch them. I didn't know the exact motel, but I had a clue. Room 12, and the fact she said same motel. Checking the text thread I'd copied from her phone, I found earlier mentions, see you at the Dragonfly Inn. One message read, with a date stamp from a month ago. The Dragonfly Inn was a small roadside motel on the outskirts of the town, ironically, just a few miles from my own construction site. It was the kind of low-key place with neon signs that mostly truckers and cheaters used, off the main highway. I remembered the place well. I'd actually done a roofing job there 2 years back when they renovated. The owner, Mr. Patel, was a friendly guy. He might even recognize me. That could come in handy. I drove to the motel with adrenaline pumping. It was dusk when I pulled into the gravel lot, parking a discreet distance from the office. The neon sign buzzed Dragonfly Inn vacancies in garish pink and green. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the front office. An old wall clock ticked above a counter cluttered with tourist brochures and a bell. I rang the bell and waited, tapping my foot anxiously. Mr. Patel emerged from a back room, adjusting his glasses. His face lit up with recognition. Mr. Harrison, hello. Long time, you need a room? I gave a quick, tense smile. Actually, I'm looking for someone staying here tonight. A guest named Kevin. Tall guy, dark hair. Might have checked in a little while ago. I had no clue what this Kevin looked like, but I guessed tall, dark as a shot in the dark. Patel frowned slightly. We value guests' privacy, he began. I realized how it must look, me, agitated, asking for someone. I lowered my voice. Please, this is important. My wife is with him, I said, voice shaking despite my efforts. They're having an affair. I need to confirm it with my own eyes. I won't cause a scene that'd hurt your business, I promise. I just need to know. He studied me for a moment, then his expression softened. Perhaps he saw the pain in my eyes. I see, he said quietly. There was a man who checked in about 20 minutes ago. Young, maybe mid-30s, dark hair. He paid cash for room 12. And a woman arrived just a minute later and went into that room. She was wearing a blue dress. I closed my eyes briefly. That was definitely Laura. The image of them slipping into that seedy motel room together made me want to smash something. Mr. Patel put a gentle hand on my shoulder. Be careful, Mr. Harrison. Should I call the police? I shook my head vehemently. No, no police. Adultery might be a crime on the books here. North Carolina still had an old law against it, I recalled. But I'm not looking to have them arrested. I just need evidence and to confront them. He nodded. All right. I'll make sure no one disturbs you. Just don't do anything you'll regret. I'd hate to have to call the cops on you. He offered a sympathetic half-smile. Thank you, I whispered, and turned to leave. Outside room 12, I could see the curtains were drawn. The door was closed, of course, but as I crept closer, I could hear muffled voices and then a woman's laughter, her laughter, through the thin door. It was the laugh I used to treasure, now like knives in my ears. My hands were trembling, but I had presence of mind to take out my phone, open the camera, and hit record. With my other hand, I quietly tried the doorknob. Locked, naturally. I hadn't really expected otherwise, so I raised my hand and gave 3 sharp knocks. The voices inside went silent. Then I heard the scuffle of movement. A few seconds later, the door opened just a crack, held on the chain latch. A man's face appeared in the gap, early 30s, lean, dark hair damp like he'd just showered, or just finished other activities. He had a cocky look that immediately made me want to break his jaw. Can I help? He started, and then he saw me fully. I don't know what my expression was, but it must have been terrifying because his eyes went wide. Behind him, I heard Laura's voice, alarmed. Who is it, Kev? She didn't finish his name. I think some instinct told her. She appeared in a robe, the motel's white robe, peering over his shoulder. When she saw me, her face drained of color as if she'd seen a ghost. Oh my God! Jake! In that instant, seeing my wife standing half-dressed next to this stranger, all the suspicions and secret hurts of the last year crystallized into reality. It was true. It was all true. My heart felt like it was both shattering and burning with fury, but I kept my voice deathly calm. Surprise, I said bitterly. I shoved the door hard with my shoulder. The flimsy chain lock snapped out of the wall with a loud crack, sending the door flying open and the man stumbling back. He wasn't a big guy, maybe 2 inches shorter than me, and not used to manual labor from the looks of him. He scrambled to grab his jeans from the floor, holding them in front of him like a shield. Laura yelped and clutched the robe tighter around herself. Jake, wait, please, she stammered, face contorted in panic and shame. I stepped into the room, heart hammering. The place reeked of betrayal. The air was stuffy and smelled of cheap floral air freshener trying to cover up sweat and perfume. On the unmade bed, I saw the evidence of what they'd been doing. The sheets twisted, 2 wine glasses on the nightstand, and a torn open condom wrapper. That sight felt like a punch to the gut, and I had to fight the urge to lunge at both of them. The man, Kevin, managed to pull on his jeans enough to cover himself. Listen, man, I'm sorry, he began, voice shaking. He put his hands up as if to placate me. This isn't what it looks like. Shut the hell up, I growled, taking a step toward him. He backed up, nearly tripping on the bed. I realized I still had my phone in my hand, recording. I angled it to capture his face and Laura behind him. No, actually, go on. Explain to me what this is, if not what it looks like. I'm all ears. Laura started crying, not loud sobs, but tears streaming down her face as she choked out, "Jake, I'm so sorry. I—" "Oh, save it," I snapped, cutting her off. I didn't even look directly at her. I kept my eyes on him. There was a roaring in my ears and my hands shook, with the effort of holding myself back from violence. "So you're Kevin, huh? The guy who thinks it's fine to screw another man's wife?" He flushed a deep red. I— "We didn't mean to hurt anyone," he muttered. "We just—" I barked out a harsh laugh. "Didn't mean to hurt anyone? You stick your dick in a married woman and somehow nobody gets hurt? Are you stupid or just that selfish?" My voice was rising despite myself. I took another step and now I was inches from him. I could see him flinch as I got in his face. He had about a day's stubble and I could smell the fear and sweat on him. He glanced at my phone, realizing perhaps that I was recording. "Look, this is between you and your wife. I think I should just look—" "You're not going anywhere." I jabbed a finger into his chest, shoving him back down to sit on the bed. "Not until I say my piece." I then turned, finally, to look at Laura. She had sunk to the edge of a chair by the small table, her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. Hearing her quiet sobs would have broken my heart once, but right now, it just fueled my anger. "Laura," I said, my voice low and cold. "How long—" She looked up, eyes red and mascara starting to smear. "Jake, please, How long?" I repeated, each word like stone. "Months? A year? Longer?" She drew a shuddery breath. "6 months," she whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened. We met online and—" I cut her off with a harsh wave of my hand. "I don't need the sordid details of your meet cute." My voice dripped with sarcasm and pain. "Jesus, Laura, I trusted you. I have been nothing but faithful, working my ass off for this family, and you repay me by whoring around with this." I gestured at Kevin, who bristled a bit at the word whoring, but kept quiet. "Do you even think about Sophie and Josh? Or were you too busy rolling around in this fleabag motel to care that you're blowing up their family?" At the mention of the kids, she broke down in full sobs. "I do care. I love our children. If you loved them, you wouldn't be here right now," I snarled. "If you loved any of us, you wouldn't have done this." For a moment, none of us spoke. My words hung in the air, and only her sobs and the hum of the old AC unit filled the silence. I realized I was breathing hard, adrenaline making my chest heave. Kevin sat on the bed, eyes downcast, looking as pathetic as a man caught in his underwear can. I had seen enough, more than enough. I took a step back and raised my phone, making sure to capture the lovely couple in one frame. "Smile," I said bitterly. "You're on camera. Consider this our divorce video." Then I hit stop, saving the recording. I had on tape their faces, the room, likely Laura's voice apologizing, and perhaps my own rant. It would be useful, if not in court, then at least to remind them that I had proof. Laura stood abruptly, panic in her eyes. "Divorce, Jake, no, please." She rushed toward me, reaching out as if to touch my arm. I recoiled from her like she was poison. "What the hell did you expect?" I shouted, finally unleashing the volume I'd been holding back. My voice echoed in the small room. "You've been sleeping with another man for 6 months, lying to my face, wrecking our marriage. You think I'm just going to pat you on the back and say, 'Oh, that's okay, honey. Everyone makes mistakes'? Damn right I'm divorcing you." She crumpled, clinging to the edge of the table for support. I I made a horrible mistake," she wailed. "I was lonely, and you were always so busy with work. I felt neglected, and one thing led to another, and—" "Don't you dare try to pin this on me working," I roared. "I worked long hours to provide for you and our kids. I never cheated, never stopped loving you. If you were unhappy, you could have talked to me or suggested counseling. You didn't have to spread your legs for a stranger." The vulgarity made her flinch as if slapped, but I didn't care at this point. Kevin rose from the bed, having pulled his jeans all the way up now, and tried to insert himself, palms out. "Okay, man, I think she gets it. She's sorry. Maybe you two can go home and talk privately." I whirled on him with a glare that could have melted steel. You don't get to suggest anything. You have no part in our talk. This is my family you stuck your nose in, you son of a bitch. Do you have a wife? Girlfriend? How would you feel if someone did this to you?" He swallowed. "I'm not married. Look, I didn't want anyone to get hurt. Laura told me things were practically over between you two." Laura interjected hastily, voice cracking. "I never said that, Kev. I told you we were having issues, but—" Oh, issues? I laughed in disbelief. Sure, we had no issues until you created some. And you, I pointed at Kevin again, just took her word for it and decided it was fine to have an affair with a married mother of two. No excuses. Both of you disgust me. He stiffened slightly, maybe offended, but he had the sense to remain mostly silent. Instead, he reached down and picked up his shirt from the floor, pulling it on. I'm I'm gonna leave. Laura, maybe we should have space, he mumbled. Clearly, he wanted to get the hell out of Dodge now that it was all out in the open. I stepped aside, gesturing to the door with a flourish. Oh, please do leave. Run, in fact. Because this isn't over, not by a long shot. I lowered my voice into an icy, calm tone that actually seemed to scare him more than my yelling. You have no idea who you just messed with. I hope whatever you got here was worth the price you're going to pay. His face went pale. Are you threatening me? He asked quietly. I smiled, but it was humorless. No, not a threat, a promise. You're about to find out what consequences look like, Kevin. Now get the hell out of my sight. He looked to Laura, who was silently crying, then back at me. Deciding self-preservation was the better part of valor, he grabbed his wallet and keys off the dresser and edged past me warily. As he walked out the door, I followed a step or two behind him, just in case I got the sudden, irresistible urge to kick his sorry ass and needed to restrain myself. Frankly, seeing him cower was satisfying enough at the moment. He hurried across the lot to a navy blue sedan, got in, and peeled out in a spray of gravel, never looking back. I stood in the doorway, chest heaving, watching the dust settle from his car. My fists were clenched so tight my nails bit into my palms. Part of me wanted to chase him, but I had bigger issues right here. Taking a deep breath, I turned back into the room. Laura had sunk to the floor, back against the wall, knees drawn up to her chest. She was weeping softly, muttering, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, over and over. I had loved this woman for over a decade. Seeing her so broken might have stirred compassion in me once, but now I just felt emptiness and anger. Maybe a sliver of pity. But mostly, I saw someone who made her own bed and now had to lie in it. I spoke, each word measured. Get dressed, we're leaving. She looked up at me, her face a wreck of tears and smeared makeup. Jake, please, can we just talk? I'll do anything to fix this, please. She reached out a hand toward me, like she expected me to help her up. I stepped back, out of reach. The time for talking was before you hopped into a motel bed, I said coldly. Now it's time for lawyers. But we sure as hell are not having this conversation here. I won't have you bawling in a place like this. Have some dignity, Laura. She winced at that, but nodded weakly. Struggling to her feet, she went about collecting her scattered clothing. I turned away to give her some shred of privacy, and honestly, I couldn't bear to look at her any longer just then. I stared at the ugly patterned carpet, my mind already moving ahead. I'd mentally prepared for this confrontation all day, and oddly I felt a sense of clarity now that the blow-up had happened. There was no going back. She had made her choices, and I would make mine. When she was dressed, back in that blue dress, which now just made me sick, I walked her out to my truck. It was a tense, silent drive home. Night had fully fallen and the ride was only 15 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. She kept her face turned toward the passenger window, perhaps ashamed, perhaps scared to even look at me. I kept my eyes on the road, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my forearms ached. As we pulled into our driveway, I finally broke the silence. You'll stay with your mom tonight. My voice allowed no argument. She inhaled sharply. But the kids are already there, aren't they? I snapped, recalling her plan. You told your mom you were both going out? Fine. You can go there and play the dutiful mother in the morning. But as for tonight, you lost any right to share a roof with me. Laura looked down at her lap, fresh tears dripping. This is my home too. I killed the engine and turned to her, a flare of anger lighting again. You should have thought of that. You think you can walk back in like everything is normal after what I caught you doing? Not a chance. I don't want you near me tonight. Frankly, I don't want you near me at all. She opened her mouth, then closed it, swallowing whatever protest or plea she'd been about to utter. Good. We went inside just long enough for her to grab an overnight bag. I stood in the foyer, arms crossed, watching her every move. She was shaking as she packed a few essentials, perhaps afraid I might erupt again. But I was eerily calm now, drained and resolute. My quiet stare probably unnerved her more than yelling. Before she left, she paused a few feet from me. "Jake, I know you won't believe this right now, but I truly am sorry," she whispered. "I've been a terrible wife and I regret it so much. I love you, I never stopped. I was just stupid and selfish. If I could take it back, but you can't," I said, voice flat. "You did what you did, and now we deal with it." I opened the front door and gestured for her to go. "We'll talk about logistics later. For now, good night, Laura." Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say more, but then she hung her head and walked slowly out into the night. I watched as she got into her car. She sat there for a moment, perhaps hoping I'd come after her or call out. I didn't move. Finally, she started the car and drove off into the darkness. I closed the door and stood alone in the silent house, our house, which suddenly felt cold and empty. My reflection in the hallway mirror caught my eye. I looked haunted, eyes bloodshot and face drawn. The rage was still there, but now that I was by myself, the pain hit me full force. I sank onto the bottom stair, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I let myself feel it. She cheated on me. The woman I gave my heart to broke it and broke our family along with it. I sat there for what felt like hours, head in my hands. The only thing that kept me from falling apart completely was the mental image of my children. Sophie with her gap-toothed smile, Josh with his sticky fingers always reaching for mine. They were counting on me, and they had no idea what was coming. I had to protect them from the fallout of this as much as possible. Eventually, I forced myself up. There was work to do. This battle was just beginning, and if I wanted to come out on top, I needed to be smart and one step ahead. I was going to destroy Laura and her lover, not with my fists, but with something far more brutal: the law. Chapter 3: Rallying Allies and Legal Strategy. I hardly slept that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, making lists of things that needed to be done. The house was eerily quiet without Laura or the kids, an emptiness that alternated between calming and deeply unsettling. I found myself listening to the hum of the fridge or the ticking of the clock just to have some noise. Anything to keep my mind from replaying the images of Laura and Kevin at the motel. By 5 a.m., I'd brewed a pot of strong coffee and already had a plan sketched out. Item 1 on my list: call a lawyer as soon as offices opened. I knew I needed a damn good divorce attorney, preferably one who wouldn't balk at going aggressive. This wouldn't be a simple, uncontested split. I wanted to ensure I got full custody of the kids and that Laura paid dearly for what she'd done. North Carolina might be a no-fault divorce state in general, but it still allows fault-based claims in some aspects like alimony, and adultery is a big one. I recalled from somewhere that if a dependent spouse cheats, they can be barred from receiving alimony. Thank God for old-fashioned laws. Not that I thought Laura would even try to get alimony since she works and we earn somewhat close. I make a bit more with overtime. But if she had any designs on it, that was off the table. More importantly, NC was one of those few states where you could sue the person your spouse cheated with for damages. Alienation of affection and criminal conversation. Quaint legal terms for basically wrecking a marriage and sleeping with a married person. It rarely goes to trial, but when it does, it can bankrupt the cheating partner. I had a feeling a certain Kevin had no idea about that law. Most people don't until it hits them like a truck. I jotted that down. Alienation of affection suit versus Kevin. Research lawyers for that too. Second on my list, secure all evidence. I already had the text messages saved and the video I took. I needed to back those up securely. Maybe email copies to myself, store on a cloud, and a thumb drive just in case. I planned to hand it all to my attorney. I also recalled the possibility of hiring a private investigator earlier in the process, but now that I had caught them red-handed, I wondered if I needed one. Perhaps a PI could still dig up more on Kevin, like who he is, his background, and if he's worth anything to gauge the viability of a lawsuit. Also, maybe to document further any interactions if needed. I also realized I should notify my bank first thing Monday to separate our finances temporarily, or at least monitor for any unusual activity. Sometimes people do irrational things when confronted, like draining accounts. We had a joint checking and savings and credit cards together. I wasn't sure what Laura might do, but I wasn't going to assume rationality from a person who had lied to me for half a year. Finally, I had to think about the kids. They were supposed to be at my mother-in-law's. Normally, I'd pick them up Saturday afternoon or evening after a date night. In this case, I decided I'd fetch them in the morning and bring them to my sister Linda's for the day. I didn't want them here when Laura returned to get whatever she needed. They didn't need to see any fights. And sadly, I realized, they shouldn't see their parents under the same roof again for now. This home was going to break apart and I had to manage how they experienced that. At 7 a.m., I called Linda again. She answered on the second ring, sounding worried. Jake, are you all right? I was up half the night thinking about you. I rubbed my eyes, exhaustion catching up. Not really all right, no. You were right. Something was going on. I caught Laura cheating. The words tasted bitter and surreal coming out of my mouth. I briefly explained the events of last night, at least the broad strokes. Linda gasped and cursed under her breath. She always had a protective streak for me. That ungrateful, after everything. My God, Jake, I am so sorry. She sounded on the verge of tears herself. Thanks, look, I need your help. I'm going to pick up the kids from her mom's soon. Can I bring them to you for a bit? I have a lot of errands to run today, lawyers and such. Of course, absolutely. Bring them over. They can play with their cousins or I'll take them to the park or whatever to keep them busy. Linda has 2 kids of her own, a little older than mine, and I was grateful we lived close. Just don't tell them anything yet, I said quickly. I need to figure out how to handle that. As far as they know, Mom and Dad maybe had a fight or something, but my voice broke a little. I don't want them finding out details, not if I can help it. I understand, she said gently. One step at a time, they'll be okay with me. You do what you need to, and Jake, get the meanest lawyer you can find. There was steel in her voice. She was as angry as I was on my behalf. That's the plan, I replied. After I hung up, I spent a while backing up all the evidence files, then showered and dressed. I caught a glimpse of our family photo on the wall in the hallway, the 4 of us smiling on the beach last summer. It felt like looking at strangers from another lifetime. I took it off the wall and set it face down on a shelf. Couldn't look at that right now. By 9 a.m., I was at my mother-in-law's front door. Laura's mother, Carol, greeted me with a surprised look. She's a kindly woman in her late 60s who adores our kids, and she'd always been fond of me. Or so I thought. Today, however, I saw a flicker of concern, or was it judgment, in her eyes. Likely Laura had called her last night after leaving our house. I braced myself. Jake, good morning, Carol said carefully. Laura's upstairs with Sophie and Josh helping them get dressed. They mentioned something about you coming to pick them up? Yes, I said simply, stepping inside. Thank you for watching them. I wasn't going to volunteer any information, not until I spoke to a lawyer, and certainly not to my cheating wife's mother. But Carol stepped closer and lowered her voice. Laura told me that you found out about her and, another man. Jake, I'm so sorry, I don't know what to say. I never imagined she'd... I held up a hand, stopping her. I appreciate that, Carol. But this is really between me and Laura now. I'm just here for my kids. I tried to keep my tone polite. I didn't blame her. She looked genuinely upset by her daughter's actions. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Of course, just please don't punish the children in all this. They need both of you. I frowned. They will always have me. I can't speak for Laura's future presence yet. It was a blunt hint at custody to come. She opened her mouth to respond, but just then the kids came thundering down the stairs with Laura trailing behind. Daddy, Josh cried, barreling into me. Sophie followed more slowly, looking confused. Normally we wouldn't both be here the morning after a planned date night. Likely she sensed something was off. I scooped Josh up and forced a smile. Hey, buddy, did you have fun at Grandma's? He nodded enthusiastically and started babbling about the pancakes they made for breakfast. I hugged Sophie too, smoothing her rumpled hair. She looked at me with her big green eyes and asked, Where's Mommy? Is she coming home too? Before I could answer, Laura spoke from the staircase. I'll be home a little later, sweetie. I have to run some errands with Grandma. She offered a smile that I could tell was fake, though the kids didn't catch it. I gently took Sophie's hand. Actually, you and Josh are going to hang out with Aunt Linda today, okay? Won't that be fun? Cousin Daniel and Marcus will be there. The mention of their older boy cousins made Josh squirm with excitement to get down and go already. Sophie furrowed her brow. What about you and Mom? I have some work stuff to take care of, I lied softly. and Mom needs to help Grandma with something. I shot a glance at Laura. She was dressed casually today, jeans and a hoodie, looking pale and tired. Good, I thought. Welcome to the consequences. Sophie shrugged. Okay, as long as we go to Aunt Linda's, not home. It's boring without you there. Her words held a hint of accusation toward Laura, perhaps? Maybe she'd noticed I wasn't at Grandma's initially and wondered why Mommy was there instead of with me. We gathered their overnight bags and I ushered them out to my truck. Laura followed us to the door. Jake, she said softly as I was about to leave, after you drop them off, could we talk, please? We should figure out what to do next. I paused, looking at her across the bed of my truck while the kids climbed into the cab. I kept my expression steeled. The only talking I'll be doing is through a lawyer. I'll be in touch when I'm ready. She blinked, tears springing up again, but she just nodded slightly. Okay, she whispered. I left without another word. Dropping the kids at Linda's was easy. She enveloped them in hugs and promised a day of fun. She gave me a meaningful look over their heads and I gave her a small nod of gratitude. I'll come get them this evening, I said. Take your time, she said firmly. They can even spend the night if needed. I left, knowing they were in good hands. Now, to find that mean lawyer. In the car earlier, I'd asked Siri for top divorce attorney in Raleigh and got a few names. One stood out. Martin Kellogg, Esquire, who had a reputation for handling messy divorces and also had experience with alienation of affection cases. The blurb mentioned it. Perfect. I dialed his office. To my surprise, he had an opening to meet me before noon, likely a cancellation. I jumped on it and drove straight over. Martin Kellogg's office was in a tall glass building downtown. I felt a little out of place in my jeans and flannel next to all the suits in the lobby, but I squared my shoulders. This was business now, and I'd do whatever it took. Kellogg himself turned out to be a slim, sharp-eyed man in his 50s with a no-nonsense manner. We sat in a private conference room, and I laid out the situation bluntly. My wife's affair, 2 kids involved, and my desire to scorch the earth, my exact words, in the divorce in terms of custody and financial outcomes. He listened carefully without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes. When I mentioned wanting to also pursue an alienation of affection and possibly a criminal conversation suit against the lover, a thin smile appeared on his face. "Oh, you've done some homework, Mr. Harrison," he said, steepling his fingers. "I'm not looking to play fair," I said, my voice firm. "They didn't, so why should I? I want to use every legal tool available to make them pay, especially him. And I want my kids with me. She can have supervised visitation at most. I don't trust her judgment right now." I then recounted how she had left the kids for her tryst. Though they were safe with Grandma, it still meant she prioritized affair over being with them that night, and generally emphasized her betrayal. Kellogg nodded. North Carolina requires a 1-year separation period before a divorce can be finalized, but we can file the initial complaint citing adultery as the reason. That will set the tone. Adultery is technically a misdemeanor crime in NC, though it's almost never prosecuted, but it has strong bearing on alimony. Are you the higher earner? By a small margin, yes, I said. Maybe 60-40 split of income, give or take. Well, normally she might ask for some alimony with a gap like that if she's been married a long time. But if we prove adultery, which it sounds like we can, given your evidence, she gets nothing in that regard. As for property, North Carolina is equitable distribution. The affair itself won't directly get you more of the marital assets unless we can show she spent significant marital funds on the affair. I thought about it. She might have. I have one receipt, and I suspect she used some household money for hotels or gifts. He tapped his pen. We can request her credit card statements in discovery and bank records. Any expenditures on the affair can be argued as financial misconduct, which might justify giving you a larger share of assets to compensate. It's not guaranteed, but judges can factor it in. Good, I said. Now custody. That's my biggest concern. I want primary custody of Sophie and Josh. Joint legal, fine, but I want them living with me. I have evidence of her poor judgment, beyond the affair itself. If she's leaving them on weekends to cheat, who knows what else? Also, I hesitated, considering if I should mention this plan. But he needed full info. Also, I suspect she might continue seeing this man, and I don't want him around my kids. I worry about their safety or moral well-being if they're exposed to this situation. Kellogg nodded. Family court is a separate matter. Judges primarily care about the best interests of the children. Adultery doesn't automatically make someone a bad parent, but if her affair caused neglect or if she prioritizes the lover over the kid's needs, that's relevant. Do you have any incidents showing the children were in harm's way or neglected due to this? I thought. At that point, not really concrete. They were with Grandma when she cheated, which is responsible, actually. But maybe I could catch something. Not yet, but trust me, her head hasn't been in the right place for a while. If I gather something, I'll let you know. He made a note. We can seek temporary custody for you when we file, on grounds that you're more stable. We'll highlight that she has been acting deceitfully and may be less focused on the children. Perhaps even ask for a morality clause. Some judges in NC will order that no unrelated overnight guests of the opposite sex when kids are present, etc. That would at least keep the lover away during her visitation if granted. I liked that idea. Yes, let's do that. And if possible, I want child support from her, if I have primary custody. Certainly. If you have the kid's majority of time and her income is lower, she'd pay guideline support. It might not be a huge amount if incomes are close, but it's something. And frankly, having her pay will sting more than the money itself. I couldn't agree more. Next, we turned to suing Kevin. I handed Kellogg a printout of Kevin's full name and phone number that I'd pulled from Laura's phone contacts before our service plan password was changed. I'd done that last night too. First thing, I changed our online account password to prevent Laura from messing with the phone records. I'd found Kevin's surname via a reverse lookup of his number. Turns out he was Kevin Grant, and a quick Google showed he worked as a sales rep for a pharmaceutical company. Kellogg raised an eyebrow. You're thorough. Mr. Grant can indeed be a defendant in an alienation of affection and criminal conversation lawsuit. We have to file those within 3 years of the last act, so timing is fine. Criminal conversation simply requires proof of actual sex between them, and that it happened during your marriage, which you have. You witnessed it and have evidence like texts, receipts, etc. Alienation of affection requires proving your marriage had love, and that his actions destroyed it. The fact that prior to this you weren't separated and you tried to save the marriage can show that, plus her involvement with him clearly led to this marital breakdown. He continued, these suits can be messy and sometimes end up in jury trials, where moral outrage can lead to big verdicts. Are you prepared for that? Often these cases settle out of court quietly because the defendant doesn't want publicity. But if he doesn't have substantial assets, a large judgment might be hard to collect. Do you know if he's wealthy? I shrugged. He's a pharma sales guy, maybe doing decently, but not rich. However, I suspect his company wouldn't like this publicity. And even if he's not super wealthy, I want to put the fear of God in him. If he's smart, he'll think twice before screwing another man's wife. Maybe he'll settle to keep it quiet, or if not, I don't care if he has to declare bankruptcy. I want a judgment on record. It's principle, too. Kellogg actually smiled, a predatory grin. Understood. I've handled a couple of these. One settled for $200,000 before trial. Another went to a jury, and they awarded my client $500,000. Though we only collected some of that before the guy filed bankruptcy. Still ruined him, though. The thought of Kevin squirming like that brought me grim satisfaction. That sounds fine by me. We spent the next hour working out immediate steps. By the end, I formally retained him for the divorce and also an associated civil suit. We prepared a draft of a divorce complaint citing adultery, requesting unequal distribution of assets due to her misconduct and spending on affair, sole physical custody to me, no alimony to her, and an injunctive relief to not dissipate assets. He'd file it first thing Monday and also prepare the alienation of affection lawsuit to file shortly after. I left his office feeling a weight lifted. I had a warrior in my corner and a plan of attack. But there was still a long road ahead. Chapter 4. War begins, papers served and lines drawn. Monday morning came, and with it the first real shots of the war. Over the weekend, I had a minimal contact with Laura. She texted me Sunday asking if she could come home to talk. I responded only with, I have legal counsel now. All communication between us about the marriage or kids will go through the proper channels. For now, you should stay at your mother's. It was cold, but it kept a clear boundary. She replied with a sad, okay, I understand. I let her see the kids Sunday evening for dinner, supervised at Carol's house, but insisted they return to me overnight. She didn't fight that, likely sensing I could use it against her if she tried to withhold them. On Monday, at work, I informed my boss that I was going through a personal crisis and might need some flexibility and days off for court or meetings. He was surprisingly supportive, he's been through a divorce too, and told me to do what I needed. That was a relief. My job was stable, and I'd need it more than ever now as a single dad. That afternoon, I got confirmation from Kellogg's office that the divorce complaint had been filed and a process server was dispatched to hand it to Laura. I had given them Carol's address, assuming she'd be there. It felt strange, almost cruel, to sick legal dogs on someone who, until days ago, was the person I loved most. But every time I wavered, I recalled the motel, those texts, the lies. I hardened my heart and reminded myself she made these choices. By evening, I heard from Kellogg. Laura had been served. He forwarded me a message she sent him, as the papers direct her to contact my attorney. It was brief. She wrote that she acknowledges receipt of the complaint and is seeking her own counsel. That was expected. Less expected was the phone call I got around 7 p.m. I was at home cleaning up dinner dishes while the kids watched TV, when my cell rang from an unknown number. I answered warily. "Hello? Jake Harrison?" An unfamiliar male voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" A sigh. "This is Kevin Grant." I nearly dropped the phone. My heart rate spiked with instant anger. "You've got some nerve calling me," I hissed, stepping into the garage to avoid the kids hearing. "I know, but please, listen. I want to apologize," Kevin said. His tone was subdued, not the defensive or cocky vibe he'd had in person. "Apology not accepted," I snapped. "And if you're smart, you won't contact me or my wife again. My ex-wife-to-be, rather." He rushed on as if expecting my hostility. "I understand. And I'm actually calling to say you won't have to worry about me bothering either of you. I've broken things off with Laura completely. I told her I can't see her anymore." That was interesting news, but I didn't trust him or even care about his newfound conscience. "Is that so?" I said flatly. "Yes, I deeply regret what happened. If I had known the full situation, how wonderful her family was, how much damage this would do, I wouldn't have. I never intended for anyone to get hurt." I rolled my eyes at the cliche. "Well, people did get hurt. What did you think would happen, Kevin? That she'd divorce me and ride off into the sunset with you scot-free? That my kids would just be fine? You wrecked my marriage and their home." He sounded genuinely miserable when he answered. "I know, and I'll have to live with that. I wanted to tell you man to man that it's over, and—" He hesitated, then continued quietly. "I got a letter from an attorney today. Something about intent to file an alienation of affection lawsuit." Ah, so he'd been warned. Likely Kellogg's office had sent a notice letter to him as a scare tactic or courtesy before formally filing. This was good. I wanted him sweating. "Then you know what's coming," I said. "I fully intend to follow through with that. You actions have consequences." He groaned softly. "Look, I don't have that kind of money. What is it you want from me? If you need some kind of restitution or settlement, maybe we can work something out without dragging this through court. I really don't want my name in the papers or this getting to my job, please." I smirked, picturing him squirm. "I'll refer you to my lawyer for any discussions on that. It's out of my hands." "Jake, please," he implored. "I'm begging you. I'm willing to pay something reasonable, but if you go after some crazy amount, I'm ruined. I'm not a rich guy, and this will devastate my mother too. She's old, and if she finds out what I did—" He was nearly crying now. For a moment, I felt a twinge of something like pity, but I quickly reminded myself that I owed him nothing. He hadn't shown pity when sleeping with my wife, and the mental image of my own children's potential future, shuttling between divorced parents, therapy for trust issues, steeled me. "Consequences, Kevin," I repeated. "Maybe you'll serve as an example to others. Now, unless you have anything else to say, don't call me again. Next communication can be through legal channels." He was silent for a second, then quietly said, "Understood. For what it's worth, I really am sorry." I hung up without replying. Inside, I found Sophie peeking at me around the garage door. She had an uncanny sense of things. "Daddy, who was that? You looked mad," she said softly. I forced a smile and scooped her into a hug. Just a work call, honey. Grown-up stuff? Nothing for you to worry about. I hated lying, but the truth was too ugly for an 11-year-old. She studied me with those perceptive eyes but nodded and rested her head on my shoulder. Are you and Mom mad at each other? Grandma and Mom were whispering a lot yesterday. Kids pick up everything. I sighed, carrying her back into the house. We had a disagreement, but we both love you and Josh so much. Sometimes adults need to work through some hard things. It'll be okay. I wished I felt as confident as I tried to sound. She accepted that for now and went back to watching TV with her brother. Over the next week, things moved quickly. Laura retained an attorney of her own, a woman named Elaine Parker. Parker called Kellogg, and they arranged a sit-down meeting for all four of us at Kellogg's office to see if any temporary agreements could be reached. Custody schedules, living arrangements, while the case proceeded, rather than immediately duking it out in front of a judge. This is fairly common. Courts like when parties can agree to temporary terms. I wasn't sure what to expect seeing Laura again in person, with lawyers present. Part of me was nervous. I had to remain composed no matter what she said. Kellogg prepped me beforehand. Let me do most of the talking. Don't agree to anything you're not comfortable with. We have the leverage here due to her actions. But if we can get some concessions now, it will save time and money. The meeting took place in a conference room with a long oval table. I arrived first with Kellogg, and a few minutes later, Laura and her lawyer walked in. Laura looked different. She was in professional clothes, a crisp blouse and skirt, but she'd lost weight in just a week. Or maybe it was the lack of sleep evident in slight bags under her eyes. She gave me a tentative, sorrowful nod in greeting. I simply looked away. It hurt more than I expected to be in the same room. A flood of memories and emotions rushed up, but I focused on a spot on the wall and hardened myself. Her lawyer, Parker, was polite but all business. After we all introduced ourselves, Parker opened by saying, "Mrs. Harrison acknowledges the marriage has broken down, and she accepts responsibility for her misconduct. That said, we want to resolve this in a way that is least damaging for the children and allows both parties to move forward." Kellogg replied smoothly, "Mr. Harrison is primarily concerned about the children's well-being. In that vein, he believes they should reside with him full-time for stability, given the circumstances, with reasonable visitation to their mother." Laura flinched at that and spoke up, voice quavering slightly. "Jake, please. I know I hurt you, but I'm still their mother. They need me, too." I clenched my jaw. I finally turned my gaze to her. "They needed a mother who wouldn't betray their father," I said quietly. Kellogg put a cautionary hand on my arm, but I continued. "However, as much as I might wish to, I won't erase you from their lives. I just want them to have a stable home. Right now, that's with me, in our house. You're staying at your mom's. Are you planning to move back into the house?" Laura looked down. "I didn't think you'd even want me there." "You assumed right," I replied. "So until this is settled, I'll stay with the kids in the house and you figure out your living situation. They can visit you, but I want them home with me at night, during school especially." Her lawyer cleared her throat. "Legally, both parents have equal rights until a custody order is in place. Mrs. Harrison has just as much right to be in the marital home or have the children with her. However, she's willing to stay at her mother's for now to avoid confrontation." Parker glanced at Laura, who nodded weakly. "As for the children, perhaps a temporary shared arrangement is in order. Maybe the father has them weekdays and mother on weekends or something along those lines?" I immediately shook my head. "No. The kids have been through enough confusion. They should have one primary home base right now, and their schooling shouldn't be disrupted. Laura works full-time too, and sometimes late shifts. I'm the one who can adjust my schedule to be there for school drop-offs, pickups, etc., since my site hours are usually early." Kellogg chimed in. "Furthermore, we have concerns about the mother's judgment in the wake of her affair. She dedicated substantial time and energy to an extramarital relationship, which by definition detracted from her attention to the children. We have evidence that she would leave the children in others' care to carry on this affair." Laura's head snapped up, eyes wide. "I never neglected the kids," she said, hurt. "I arranged for babysitters or my mom to watch them a few times, yes, but they were safe and cared for." "While you met a lover in a motel," I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Not exactly mother-of-the-year behavior, Laura." She started to cry softly at that, and Parker put a comforting hand on her shoulder. I reminded myself to stay cool. A crying mother could sway people, but I knew this was partly guilt. Parker spoke firmly. Mrs. Harrison made a mistake in her personal life, but that doesn't equate to being a bad mother. Unless Mr. Harrison has evidence the children were harmed or placed in danger, which there is none, the court won't punish her in custody just for adultery. The children have a right to both parents. Splitting time is normal. Kellogg nodded slightly at me, signaling not to take the bait and argue emotionally. He responded to Parker. Certainly, courts prefer both parents involved. Mr. Harrison isn't saying she can't see them, but overnights immediately might be unsettling given the recent turmoil. Additionally, my client would like an agreement that neither party introduce the children to any new romantic partners or conduct overnight visits with such while the children are present. In plain terms, the kids should not be exposed to Mr. Grant, now or ever. Laura jumped to answer that, directing her words at me. I have no intention of seeing Kevin ever again. It's over. And I would never involve the kids in that. She sounded earnest. I agree to that condition completely. I eyed her. That at least was good to hear. I didn't fully trust her judgment anymore. But if Kevin indeed had broken it off and if she had any shame, maybe that piece was done. After more back and forth, we hashed out a temporary plan. It was decided, and later written into a temporary consent order, that the children would reside primarily with me at the marital home. Laura could have them every other weekend from Saturday morning to Sunday evening, and dinner once a week on Wednesdays to maintain frequent contact, provided she didn't have a shift. We would share legal custody, meaning both of us consult on major decisions, but I'd be the primary residential parent. Neither of us would take the kids out of state without permission from the other. And the agreed morality clause, no unrelated overnight guests of the opposite sex during visitation, and no introduction of any dating partner without mutual consent. That was mostly aimed at her. I had zero interest in dating anyone anyway. It wasn't exactly what Parker wanted. She initially pushed for 50-50 time, but I think Laura acquiesced out of guilt and hoping to avoid a court battle that might air more dirty laundry. For me, it was a win. I had the kids the majority of time, at least for now. On the financial front, we agreed to freeze any joint bank accounts except for use on normal household expenses and child needs, which neither of us would deplete. We also agreed to split the next month's mortgage and bills as status quo, since both our paychecks used to funnel into joint accounts that paid them. Those details would be figured out later permanently. Alimony, property division, those were left for another day, as was the separate tort suit. We didn't bring up the alienation suit in this four-way meeting. It wasn't relevant to the custody discussion. That bomb would drop soon enough via formal channels. When the meeting concluded, I walked out feeling somewhat triumphant yet heavy-hearted. Triumphant because I'd effectively gained primary custody right off the bat, something not all dads get, especially without a fight. Heavy-hearted because none of this felt like victory. My family was still broken. My kids would still have to shuttle to their moms on some weekends. And inside, despite everything, I did feel a pang seeing Laura so miserable. I had loved her for years. It's hard to shut that off overnight. As we prepared to leave the conference room, Laura approached me, her lawyer busy gathering papers. In a low voice, she asked, "Can I talk to you alone for just a minute?" I glanced at Kellogg. He was chatting with Parker. I figured as long as it stayed civil. "All right," I muttered, stepping aside with her. She wiped a tear from her cheek. "Thank you for letting me still see them. I was afraid. You'd try to keep them from me completely." "You know I'd never hurt them, Jake." I sighed, keeping my expression firm. "They love you. I'd never take you away from them unless I truly thought they were in danger. But you hurt them indirectly by doing what you did. We'll have to help them through that one day when they learn the truth. I'm not looking forward to that." She looked away, ashamed. "I know, I dread it too. I'm so sorry, for everything. I know saying sorry is worthless now, but I need you to know I regret it all." I regarded her, feeling strangely detached. "Maybe you do. But that doesn't change what happened. Look, as long as you abide by what we agreed and put the kids first, we won't have problems. But I'm not letting you off easy in the divorce. I won't be cruel for cruelty's sake, but I intend to make sure you face consequences too." She nodded, tears spilling again. I understand. I deserve it. I hope someday you can forgive me, even if you'll never want me back. I had no answer to that. Forgiveness was not on my horizon. I simply said, take care of yourself, Laura. And then I walked away, leaving her standing there, shoulders shaking as she cried silently. Chapter 5. Turning the Tables. With temporary arrangements in place, life found a new, if awkward, rhythm. I focused on being the best dad I could in this new reality. On the weekdays I had the kids, I made sure to keep things stable. I got up early, made them breakfast, packed lunches, and dropped them off at school. Thankfully, their schools were near my work sites, and my boss was flexible about me coming a bit later. In the evenings, I helped with homework, cooked simple dinners, or sometimes we ate with Linda's family, and read Josh bedtime stories and listened to Sophie talk about her day. There was an emotional toll in all this for them, of course. They were confused why Mommy wasn't home. We told them gently that Mommy and Daddy have some grown-up problems to work out, so we're living apart for now. A sanitized version that satisfied Josh's 7-year-old mind. He accepted it with a shrug and asked if he could have more ice cream. Sophie, however, was more upset. She cried the first few nights, missing her mother. She asked me directly if one of us did something wrong. That was tough. I couldn't exactly say, yes, Mommy did something very wrong. Nor did I want to lie that we just randomly fell out. I told her, your mom made a mistake that hurt our relationship. We're trying to figure out what comes next, but no matter what, we both love you so much. That seemed to satisfy her partially, but I could tell she suspected the nature of the mistake. Maybe she overheard things or just intuited. Regardless, I reassured both kids constantly that they were not to blame and that we both would always be there for them, just not together. On Laura's weekends with them, I packed their overnight bags and stayed cordial at exchanges. I'd drop them at Carol's, Laura stayed there still, Saturday morning. We kept conversation minimal and about the kids. It stung to have them drive off without me, but I usually use that time to catch up on things or meet with my lawyer or work a side job. I picked up a weekend side gig building a deck for a neighbor. Anything to stay busy. One Saturday evening when the kids were at their mom's, I got a text from an unknown number that turned out to be Kevin's lawyer. Apparently he hired one. It tersely said that Miss Grant wished to discuss settlement of the impending lawsuit and asked for a meeting. I forwarded it to Kellogg. He replied with a thumbs up and said we'd definitely meet. They likely wanted to pay something to avoid court. I relished that prospect. As far as I was concerned, making Kevin pay up was as important to me as anything else in this ordeal. A couple of weeks later, we had that meeting. It was held at Kellogg's office again. Kevin arrived with his attorney, a tired-looking man who seemed to handle more DUIs than heart bomb torts. Kevin himself looked markedly less sure of himself than when I first saw him. He was pale, had probably lost weight, and couldn't meet my eyes for more than a second. Good. They offered a settlement of $50,000 to drop the alienation and criminal conversation suit. I almost laughed. It was a decent chunk, but I knew we could likely win more in a sympathetic jury trial given egregiousness, especially since I could testify how it broke the family. Also, I suspected Kellogg aimed higher to make an example. Sure enough, Kellogg countered at $200,000 and made noises about how juries in our county have given six-figure awards for such cases. Kevin's lawyer balked, saying Kevin didn't have that kind of money liquefied. We knew from basic research he had a house, mortgaged, a 401k and some savings, but not $200K cash. After rounds of negotiation, we eventually reached a tentative deal, $125,000 to be paid to me, $50K upfront, and the rest over 24 months in installments, with a consent judgment that if he missed payments, the full amount came due plus interest. Additionally, a formal written apology letter to be provided, which honestly I didn't need, but Kellogg threw it in as a way to show his contrition on record. I agreed to those terms. It wasn't as satisfying as seeing him publicly shamed in court, but it got the job done. $125K would more than cover my legal fees and give some cushion for the kids' needs or college funds. Plus, the fact he'd be essentially cutting me a check for years would be a constant reminder to him of his screw-up. The settlement also included a mutual no-contact and confidentiality clause. Basically, he wanted it hush-hush, Fine by me. We signed it, and just like that, one battle ended without firing a literal shot. I walked out feeling vindicated. I had taken the one thing he valued, money, and some pride. I didn't tell the kids about any of that, of course, and only told Linda in confidence. She was impressed and called it righteous. It felt righteous. Meanwhile, the divorce case proceeded. Discovery happened, which meant exchanging financial documents, account statements, etc. There wasn't a ton of complexity. We had a house, 2 cars, some savings, 401ks. It became clear neither of us was hiding assets or anything. One sticky point was the house. I wanted to keep it for stability of the kids. She, presumably feeling guilty, said she'd be willing to let me have it and find her own place as long as I could refinance to remove her from the mortgage and give her a fair share of the equity. The equity was about 80K total in the home. Equitable distribution might say each gets 40K of value, but I argued that since the kids would live with me, and also since she had caused the divorce, maybe I get a larger portion. We haggled, and in the end, I offered to buy out her share for 25Ks, which would mean I keep 55K of equity. She gets 25K, an imbalanced split favoring me. Given my infusion of settlement cash from Kevin, I could afford that payout to avoid selling the house. She accepted that frankly low offer, likely out of remorse or wanting to move on, or maybe influenced by her mother, who told her not to uproot the kids further. As for other assets, we basically split the bank accounts as of separation date fairly. Her lawyer initially asked for half of my retirement account, but Kellogg countered, pointing out her affair could be seen as economic misconduct, spent some marital funds on it. In truth, the amount she spent on the affair was maybe a few thousand, motels, gifts, dinners, hardly enough to offset big assets. But we used that as leverage. I'd drop any claim seeking reimbursement for those expenditures if she'd drop claim on part of my 401k. She agreed. She kept her own retirement account, which was smaller anyway. Then came alimony, or post-separation support. She was not asking for any, likely knowing adultery barred it. In fact, in one filing, Parker explicitly noted, Mrs. Harrison is barred from alimony by statute due to illicit sexual behavior. Seeing that in black and white was gratifying. There was also a clause that normally I might have had to pay her attorney's fees since I was the one at fault, causing divorce if it were no fault. But in cases of adultery, the guilty spouse can be made to pay the other's fees as punishment. Kellogg made a push for that. He demanded she pay at least some of my attorney fees since her actions caused the litigation. North Carolina law allowed that in egregious cases. It was uncommon, but again, we used it as a chip. In the end, she agreed to pay $5,000 toward my lawyer's bill, a fraction of it, but it was symbolic, out of her share of assets. The custody arrangement we had stayed in place for final. Essentially, I got primary custody, and she had visitation as we'd been doing, and she'd pay child support. The state guideline ended up with her paying around $300 a month to me. Since I had more overnights and slightly lower income, the formula considered both incomes. She didn't argue it. Finally, about 3 months after the initial blow-up, we had a final settlement drawn up. It felt quick, but because she was cooperative and remorseful, and we, through lawyers, hammered things out, we avoided a drawn-out trial. One morning, we went before a judge to put on record the terms and have it finalized. Laura cried softly during the proceeding, especially when the judge asked if the marriage was irretrievably broken, and she answered yes. I remained stoic. When the judge signed off, we were officially divorced, except for the formal 1-year separation requirement. NC requires 1-year separation before absolute divorce, but interim agreements can be finalized. We'd still have to get the final decree after that period, but all terms were set now. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that it was over and I'd gotten essentially everything I set out for. Majority time with kids, the house, no alimony burden, a chunk of cash from the bastard, and even a token payment of my fees. Sorrow that it had come to this, that my marriage was a statistic now and my kids from a broken home. Outside the courthouse, Laura approached me one last time. She asked if I could ever see us being civil friends for the kids' sake down the road. I told her maybe, but it would take time. She nodded, understanding that was the best she'd get. Then she said, "You were a great husband, Jake. I'm sorry I threw it away. Please don't let my mistake close you off from finding happiness again. You deserve someone who will love you right. I didn't have a reply. I just murmured, "Take care, Laura," and walked away. Chapter 6. Triumph and New Beginnings. In the months that followed, life settled into a new normal. It wasn't easy, but it was peaceful. I poured my energy into work and raising my kids. Sophie and Josh adjusted remarkably well to the two-household setup. Children are resilient, and perhaps because Laura and I kept things amicable in front of them and never bad-mouthed each other to them, they felt secure that both parents still loved them. Interestingly, I gained a reputation among some of my buddies as the guy who cleaned up in his divorce. Word got around, I think Linda blabbed to one of her friends who was married to a friend of mine, that I'd sued the other man and got cash and that I had primary custody. A few of the guys at the construction site actually applauded me, one saying, "Man, you gave a masterclass in payback." I won't lie, it felt good to hear, but I usually just shrugged and said I did what was necessary to protect my family's future. One Friday after work, a couple of those buddies insisted on taking me out for beers, a sort of belated celebration that I was free of that cheating woman. I was hesitant. I didn't really feel like celebrating. But Linda pushed me to go, saying she'd watch the kids overnight. "You deserve a night off, Jake," she urged. "Go out, have fun. You haven't done that in ages." So I went. We hit our local bar and the guys kept buying rounds. They meant well, but they were rowdier than me and started trying to get me to flirt with women there, saying I needed to get back in the saddle. I wasn't ready and honestly felt awkward. After a while, I stepped outside for some air, leaving them laughing over darts and shots. I stood in the cool night air outside the bar, breathing deep and looking up at the stars, thinking how different my life was now. That's when I heard a familiar voice. "Jake?" I turned and, to my surprise, saw Amy, a woman I knew from high school days, who also happened to be a paralegal at Kellogg's firm. She had helped gather some financial documents for my case. She was also newly divorced, I recalled. We'd been friendly in the past, and I remembered having a small crush on her back in the day before I met Laura. She smiled a little shyly. "I thought that was you. How are you doing?" We fell into easy conversation. She admitted she'd heard bits about my case, confidentially, of course, and offered a sympathetic ear. I found myself opening up to her about how I felt. The betrayal, the fight, the victory that felt hollow sometimes. She listened without judgment. It was nice. Eventually, my buddies stumbled out, ready to hit another spot, but they paused seeing me talking with Amy. Being louts, they started to make some whooping noises and gestures. I shot them a look and they backed off, laughing and heading off without me. I was a bit embarrassed, but Amy just chuckled. Boys will be boys. We ended up talking for over an hour outside that bar, and then I walked her to her car and she gave me a warm hug goodbye. There was a spark there I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't rush anything. Over the next few weeks, Amy and I chatted more, met for coffee as friends. She understood divorce pain intimately, and we supported each other. Slowly, something blossomed. I took it slow also out of respect for the kids. I didn't want to introduce anyone to them unless it was serious. About 6 months after my divorce was finalized, I felt truly happy for the first time in a long while. I was coaching Josh's Little League team, attending Sophie's school play, enjoying peaceful weekends at home, and spending occasional evenings with Amy when the kids were at their mom's. Laura, for her part, had moved to an apartment and was doing okay. She was a devoted mom during her time with the kids and, from what I heard, wasn't dating anyone, her choice. Perhaps focusing on rebuilding herself or hoping someday for forgiveness. Then, one day, a bombshell of a different sort dropped. At a routine checkup, my doctor found my blood pressure was a bit high and asked if I was under stress. I laughed and said, "You could say that." But also, I mentioned having headaches and fatigue that I assumed was from everything going on. Long story short, he ran some blood tests, and it turned out I had some issues, nothing life-threatening, but I needed to adopt a healthier lifestyle, maybe cut back on physical overtime and eat better. It made me realize I had to take care of myself too, not just worry about everyone else or revenge. If I burnt out or got sick, who would my kids have? That was a turning point. I started jogging in the mornings, cooking healthier, Amy. Being health conscious even gave me some recipes. Gradually, I felt better physically and mentally. One evening, about a year after D-Day, Discovery Day of the affair, I sat on my porch with Linda and my father. who had driven down from his place to visit. We watched the kids chase fireflies in the yard. My dad, who's a man of few words, patted my shoulder and said, "Your mom would be proud of how you handled this, son." That meant the world to me. Linda raised a beer bottle and declared, "To Jake, who walked through hell and came out with his head high." We clinked bottles, and my dad's iced tea glass. I looked around at my family, my kids laughing, my sister smiling, and thought, I won. Not just in the legal sense, but in life. I had navigated the worst storm and found calm waters. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I stepped out to the backyard under the stars, much like I had the night I caught them. But this time I felt peace. I thought about the man I was a year ago, avi and trusting, and how I was now, perhaps a bit harder, but wiser and with my priorities clear. I realized forgiveness had slowly crept in without me noticing. Not forgiveness of the act, I'd never condone what Laura did, but I no longer felt the burning anger. It was cooling into indifference. If I could be civil and maybe even friendly with her at kids' events, that would be for the best. Hatred takes energy, and I was done giving her that. The next weekend, when I dropped the kids off at her place, I lingered a minute. I watched as she hugged them, then she looked at me questioningly. I mustered a small smile and asked, "How have you been?" It was the first normal question I'd asked her in a long time. She seemed surprised but pleasantly so, and we had a brief polite chat about work and the kids' summer plans. It wasn't much, but it felt like closing a wound. Before I left, she said softly, "Thank you, Jake." "For what?" She shrugged, eyes a bit misty. "For giving me some grace." I just nodded and said, "We're still parents together. Let's keep doing right by them." And with that, I left. As I drove away, I felt a weight lift. Revenge had run its course, justice had been served, and now life beckoned. Messy, unpredictable, but mine to live on my terms. I often think back on that stormy chapter of my life. It taught me painful lessons about trust and betrayal, but also about strength, strategy, and love, true love, which sometimes means making hard choices to protect those who matter. In the end, I didn't just win by destroying my wife's lover or securing my finances. I won by building a better life from the ashes. One evening, as I tucked Josh in at my house, he half asleep murmured, "Daddy, I'm glad you're here." In that simple, innocent phrase, I found all the victory I ever needed. The battle was over, and I had emerged not just as a survivor, but as a man who had protected his own and come out on top, legally, financially, and with his head held high. The stranger and my ex-wife lost everything that truly mattered, but I still had my children, my dignity, and a hopeful future. In every sense, I had won. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.